Nobody warned me about this one. The lists are everywhere. 5 things, 10 things, the top regrets of the dying. I have read them all. I've nodded along to all of them. But there's something none of those lists ever say out loud. Something that doesn't show up in any survey. Something I've only understood now that I'm 91 years old. And the hour is genuinely late. It's not that people regret the things they didn't do. It's that they regret the person they never became. And those are 2 entirely different griefs. There's a man I knew. He was careful his whole life. Careful with money, careful with time, careful with risk. He retired at 65, right on schedule. Had the house paid off, had the savings in order, everything done correctly. And when I saw him 3 years later, something about his eyes had gone quiet in a way I couldn't explain. He said to me, I feel like I spent 40 years getting ready, and the thing I was getting ready for never quite showed up. He wasn't talking about travel. He wasn't talking about hobbies or health. He was talking about himself. Psychologists have a name for something that happens to people in the final third of life. They call it self-continuity threat. The sudden, terrifying realization that the person you are today cannot recognize the person you imagined you'd become. We all carry somewhere deep inside us a version of ourselves we were heading toward. Younger, more honest, more free. The self that didn't edit its own laugh before laughing. The self that would have said no to that job, or yes to that trip, or called that person back. And somewhere along the way, without a single dramatic moment, that self got quietly set aside. Not abandoned, never abandoned, just postponed. And then one morning, you're 78 years old, and you realize the postponement has lasted longer than the life that came before it. I'm not talking about the things that went wrong. I'm not talking about illness or loss or bad luck. Those are real, and they hurt in ways nothing else does. I'm talking about the slow, daily choices made in perfectly ordinary circumstances. The voice that said, not yet. the voice that said, "Be responsible." The voice that said, "That's not who you are." That voice wasn't wrong exactly. It was just very afraid. And fear is a patient thing. It doesn't take your life from you all at once. It borrows a Tuesday here, a whole decade there. It speaks in the language of logic. It calls itself wisdom. I've watched men spend 30 years building a retirement and arrive there feeling like a stranger to themselves. Not because they were lazy, not because they didn't try, but because somewhere between the mortgage and the performance review and the family obligation, they stopped asking the question that mattered most, not what do I need to do, but who am I actually becoming? There's a difference between regret and grief. Regret is about the past. Grief is about a loss that still feels present. When a man says he wishes he had retired sooner, what he's really grieving isn't the time. He's grieving the version of himself who would have existed in that time. The slower man, the more curious man, the man who might have learned to sit quietly with his own thoughts without reaching for something to do. Most of us never meet that man. We meet the man who built things instead, the man who provided instead, the man who was responsible instead. And he was a good man, a real man, a man worth being. But he was only ever half the story. I have a friend. She's 84, sharp as anything, tiny woman, huge presence. She told me something I haven't stopped thinking about. She said, "The saddest thing isn't what I didn't see. It's that I spent so many years performing my own life instead of living it." I asked her what she meant. She said, "I was always doing what a person like me was supposed to do. And I became very good at being a person like me. But I never quite found out who I actually was." That sentence landed somewhere in me and has not moved. I was performing my own life. How many of us are still doing that right now? At 50, at 35, at 63, walking through days that look like our lives, but feel like a role we learned to play well enough that no one questions it anymore. The real cost of a postponed self isn't measured in missed vacations or unused savings. It's measured in the conversations you never had because they felt too risky, in the work you walked away from because it didn't pay enough, in the grief you swallowed because someone needed you to be strong, in the version of yourself that slowly learned to stop knocking because no one ever answered the door. I'm 91. I have lost friends. I have buried people I loved before I was ready. I know what real loss looks like. But the quiet loss I'm describing now, the loss of the self you were always becoming and never quite became, that one is different because it doesn't arrive all at once. It accumulates like dust on a windowsill, like miles on a road you only notice when you stop. And the strange thing is, it doesn't show up in any survey of regrets because most people don't even have language for it yet. They say, I wish I had worked less. They say, I wish I had spent more money. They say, I wish I had traveled before my knees gave out. And all of that is real. All of that matters. But underneath all of it, if you sit with someone long enough and they trust you enough to stop being polite, they'll say something like, I feel like I didn't quite get to be myself. And then they'll look out the window and the sentence will hang there, unfinished, like so many other things. I don't say any of this to make you afraid. Fear is what created the problem in the first place. I say it because there is still time, not unlimited time, not the careless time of youth, but time, real, usable, precious time. The question isn't, what have I missed? The question is, who have I been afraid to become? And then, more importantly, what would it cost me to stop waiting? Not the cost in money, not the cost in schedule, the cost in honesty, the cost of admitting to yourself quietly in some ordinary moment that you have been setting yourself aside for a very long time now, and that you don't have to. I'm 91 years old. I won't get another life. Neither will you. This one is it. And the most honest thing I can tell you, from the end of a very long road, is this: the life you actually wanted to live was never somewhere else. It was always in you, waiting, with a patience that has outlasted every excuse you ever gave it.